That's a fat-ass window for Thunder Thighs McGee over here to fit through. So, Carson, I would assume that you heard the big news that happened this week. Entertainment media is in a tizzy because we have probably the biggest deal in media history, at least in the past few years, with Netflix buying Warner Brothers.
Fuck Netflix. I'm sorry, I don't know. What else do you want me to say? I said it already. Fuck Netflix. They're going to ruin everything. I mean, they've already ruined so much with the Frankenstein release, the Wake Up Dead Man release. Could you just imagine some of the old movies? Like, let's just imagine Gone with the Wind, which is a classic movie. Haven't seen it forever. But imagine that got released to streaming. Imagine the people who watched it live in theaters got that released to streaming. You know how fucked up that would have been? Here's the thing. I'm not complaining. I like watching things in the comfort of my own home, but there is a limit because I do like going to the movies. That's like a big thing for me. It's a big part of my life is being just a general movie goer, I guess is what you want to call it. Netflix has already come out and said, hey, we're going to make sure we put most of our stuff on streaming. And to those people, I say with a very kind heart, fuck you.
Honestly, fair enough. AJ, I know you're a little less of, not necessarily less of a movie fan, but you don't go to in theaters as much. You typically, I would assume, lean towards streaming.
Yeah.
What are kind of your general thoughts on like, hey, you're going to get more movies on Netflix probably faster, but it's going to kind of change the media landscape moving forward. Because I have a lot of thoughts on how this affects outside of the movie genre, but since Carson brought it up, like, what are your thoughts on that?
So for me, as someone who avidly totally watches legally obtained streaming formats, I will say, for me, I feel like it doesn't make too much of a difference, mainly because, one, I prefer YouTube over Netflix, but also, two, like, compared to the large market share that HBO Max had, adding it to Netflix doesn't make too much of a difference since there's, like, Netflix, Disney Plus, Prime Video, and then I guess Roku and Tubi, but like it doesn't really, from I'd say a person that does more streaming, I don't think it's gonna make much of a difference in all honesty.
Well, because I looked up the numbers, and I'm going to get these a little bit off, but I believe HBO, in terms of the streaming market, holds about 6% of the market share. It was between 6 and 8% of the market share. Netflix holds about 45% of the market share. So if they purchase HBO Max, this would technically push them into the majority shareholder. If my numbers are correct, it would push them above 50% sharehold for the streaming market, which I think that's going to be a really big conversation, at least on the movie end of things, because that's where you get into monopolies. If you own over 50% of the market share, you could be considered a monopoly, even though, like you mentioned, Disney Plus holds like, I think it's roughly 25% of the market share for streaming specifically. So
Yeah, and I mean, another thing I kind of want to point out that's like obvious, and only just because I've already had conversations with a friend who works at the parks about a good portion of this. With Netflix purchasing out Warner Brothers, it opens up a huge door for, I think, specifically just Universal, because Universal partners with Netflix a lot for things. And I know it's, just one event once per year, but Halloween Horror Nights is about to get a whole lot more different than what it used to be. Like, you have to go through this and this to get this property and this and this. Netflix pretty much owns everything now. Like, quite literally everything. There's been houses that have been rumored for years that people have wanted. It, Scream, Hellraiser, which is still a rumored one for next year. These are all things that would have been nearly impossible to get. Now it's just at their fingertips because they have Netflix in their back pocket. There's other properties that they could put rides in for at parks. I think the biggest one, more specifically, and correct me if I'm wrong, they might not be Warner Brothers, but I'm pretty sure Harry Potter is Warner Brothers, right?
it is.
Yeah.
It is, in fact.
Now, they already have Harry Potter, but they can do so much more with it now that Netflix will own it, and that Universal is just basically going to take it right from the palm of the hands of Netflix. I don't know.
Well,
that's just where I'm at.
One thing that I'm interested in to hear, specifically AJ's thoughts, but both of you, is Warner Brothers also has a lot of gaming properties, and
Yeah.
Netflix is notorious for being very bad with handling gaming. They've shut down pretty much all of their internal game studios that they had because they tried to bolster their gaming division with the whole like Netflix games. You could actually play like Hades on Netflix. You could play
Lego Party.
like Squid Games, Lego Party. You can play a bunch of different games through like the browser on Netflix or even like mainly the mobile app. And now with Netflix acquiring Warner Brothers, you're introducing, you already mentioned the Harry Potter games, you're introducing like basically all of WB Games. They also own Telltale, or not Telltale, TT Games, the Lego developer. So all the Lego games that are made is owned by Warner Brothers. That is now going under Netflix. Are you worried by what that presents for the gaming side of things, let alone the media side for streaming?
I mean, I'd say for like the gaming wise, I'm a big fan of Dead by Daylight, so I feel like a hell of a lot new content will be coming out for that game, specifically DLC wise. Granted, Netflix did remove the Stranger Things DLC from DVD stores a little bit ago, but they are going to be, to my knowledge, going to be bringing it back. So with them now having a bunch of new IPs under their belt, I feel like the game, at least for Dead by Daylight itself, is going to skyrocket. And then going back to like that, that Universal Park thing, um, they've had Universal Islands of Adventure has had like the Marvel, like the old like 90s Marvel area for quite some time. And I feel like with Netflix owning a lot of Warner Brothers, I feel like Universal could potentially partner with Netflix to bring maybe a Stranger Things section, maybe replace that park so they no longer have to worry about that IP at Universal and be more up to date, I guess. So then you can have just, your casual. I haven't seen Stranger Things, but you can have like pretty much everything. Maybe they have the demo Gorgon on display, like even not just for Halloween Horror Nights, but like for around the clock, like throughout the year. Maybe have them have a Santa hat or something.
Yeah. I look, I think that specifically going back to theme parks, and I'll talk about touch on games in a minute. But like, I know because I'm up to date on it. Again, I have a friend who works in the parks. Simpsons Land, not at the end of this year, but at the end of 2026, has to go. Like Disney owns it, and they're gonna Universal has to get rid of it, so that's got to go. After a certain point, Marvel Land also is going to have to go from Universal. I don't know what year that is. I don't know when the contract's up, but I know that has to go also. One of the obvious ones that I have thought that Warner Brothers for years could have put in there, especially now that Netflix is going to own it and they can get the partnership with Universal and this and that, is all the DC properties, which I know is currently at Six Flags, but I don't think that contract is like long lasting. Once again, it's Six Flags. So I would be willing to bet that replacing all the Marvel stuff would be like some sort of DC land. I don't know. God knows what they're going to do with Simpsons. I mean, seriously, God knows. I really don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised if DC would replace that in the parks. And then as far as gaming goes, look, I'm a fan of games. I like playing certain games. I like what I like. I just before we started, I talked about Rainbow Six Siege. I love Elden Ring, Red Dead, GTA. Most games I enjoy. The thing that scares me the most is the fact that on Netflix, they've opened up the possibility of being able to play games on their streaming website. I only know this because I'm ashamed to admit it. I tried out the WWE one just because, and I own it on PS5 too. That's the stupid thing. It's like I own the full game. I was like, oh, I'm going to try it on Netflix. I just want to see what happens. First off, don't play it. It's horrible. Secondly, that opens the door to a lot of possibilities. Like, I know it's already on there, but like Red Dead Redemption being on Netflix. Okay. How about Last of Us or various different games? Like, I don't ever want to see a world in which all these games that have released on Xbox, PlayStation are just solely on like a Netflix platform, unless there's some sort of like Netflix GameCube that comes out that like rivals all other consoles, which I don't see being a possibility at all. So okay, I think for me, because I'm not as well based in it, it's hard for me to answer that question. But I can say pretty much for certain it's not gonna lead to anything good. I mean, that's for
Well,
sure.
and I think you brought up right before you mentioned gaming, probably the one that affects you and I, Carson, the most directly in terms of our fandoms and our love and what we talk about on this podcast. And that is Netflix now owns the entirety of DC. We're
Yeah.
talking DC movies, DC video games, DC comic books. Like, is Netflix seriously going to be in charge of making comic books now? That's the thing that. So, what I saw, and the deal is still being finalized, they are separating out two aspects of this deal, if you didn't know, but it's only the broadcasting side of things. So, like the live television broadcasting side. So I don't believe Netflix will own things like Cartoon Network, which, if you didn't know, is owned by Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
That will still say its own separate entity and probably go up to bid to someone else. But they will still get things like Harry Potter, DC, including the comic book branch. And like, that is going to shake things up. Like, especially for like James Gunn specifically, who's made the entire plan for DC. He has the slate. We're getting into production. And while it's going to be, given past mergers, it's probably going to be about 2 years until we see like the actual repercussions of this, because they have to go through right now, and we'll talk about this in a second. Paramount is really upset about this right now, and
Yeah.
Paramount's putting in an aggressive bid. We can talk about that in a second, but with DC, like, I don't know, I'm a little afraid of what that means, because we literally just got Superman and Creature Commandos. We're ready for the next two movies, or next few movies, and then after we get what's been announced, like, what's going to be the future? Are these movies going to get the funding they need? Another one. Are we going to be able to see Superman in theaters for more than 2 weeks? Because they did confirm they're going to release movies in theaters, but they're going to be for very short periods of time. And if I can't see like the next Justice League movie in theaters like at least 3 times, because they removed it after a week just so that it could qualify for the Oscars, like, that's a terrifying reality to me.
Well, and realistically, here's the world that I feel like we live in. I don't think I could be totally off, and this is all speculation. These are things that we can say now, and we could be completely wrong about in the future. I don't think Netflix would sideline something like a big budget film like a Justice League or a Superman 2. I think we would get an accurate runtime for films like that in theaters. I think the thing I'm more worried about is films, honestly, and this is probably a horrible example. No, it's not. I'm going to use it anyway. A film like Sinners, where spoiling my top 10, is in my top 10, potentially my number one. I loved Sinners this year. I thought it was phenomenal. That being said, that film stands a lot less of a chance making the theaters longer than a day before it were to go on streaming because of something like Netflix. That concerns me, because those films are, in my opinion, the bread and butter of what makes, not only what made Hollywood what it was, but what continues to make films just across the board so good. I love big budget films. I love The Lord of the Rings. I love Marvel. I love Star Wars. But very few of those films will end up standing the test of time as really some of the greatest that you could ever possibly say. And so I just believe that it's more detrimental to like smaller budget films with maybe even newer directors who are just trying to find their footing, you know?
Well, because and we talked, I know me and Carson talked about this offline, but like the things that really upset me, and honestly gives a lot of cadence to what you just said about Sinners, are two really big movies that released this year that a lot of people have loved, and that would be Frankenstein by Guillermo del Toro,
Mm.
which released in theaters just long enough and in limited theaters to get the Oscar qualifications. That's it. Literally released with the bare minimum qualifications so that in theaters to get an Oscar. That is it. Now you can't see it anymore in theaters. That's a Guillermo del Toro. Like, that is a huge film, and they snuffed it. Another one that is releasing with a horrible release cadence. I think it comes out on Netflix next week, but it released in a film fest like 3 months ago, and it's releasing in theaters for like a day in like 3 theaters. Is one of my most it is my most anticipated movie for the rest of the year. Granted, we're like less than a month away from the end of the
Yeah,
year.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah.
Wake Up Dead Man. I am the biggest Knives Out fan, and I loved Glass Onion. And the fact that I don't even have the opportunity to see a movie like that in theaters because they've already released it in theaters and now they're moving on and it's just going to be on Netflix. Like, that is terrible.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with a movie like Sinners. Like, that is, in my opinion, before it released, even though it's Ryan Coogler, like, Rian Johnson is also a big name director. He's literally directed Star Wars movies before, and Knives Out is a beloved series, and they're putting his movie in just Netflix purgatory. And I will say, the unfortunate reality is the majority of people aren't going to care because, as we've talked about, theaters are dying. They are unfortunately dying. There's very few of us who are keeping it alive. And if you see things like the numbers of Stranger Things that released, and when it dropped with its first batch of the final season, it crashed the servers. Like, so many people are flooding in to see that. And while they are releasing the final like movie length episode in theaters, and that did sell out, that was also a very limited release. It was like 2 showtimes over 2 days, and then it's back on Netflix.
Yeah.
So people are just like, the general public is just willing to watch things that's streaming, and a lot of that is the pandemic's fault. People got so used to it during the pandemic that it's just like, you know what? This is what we're used to. I can sit on my sofa in my underwear, click on and watch a movie, as opposed to paying gas, paying metro, whatever, and going to the theater itself, which to me is the better experience. But
Man.
yeah, I think
the better experience though. However, if and I could foresee this happening, if Netflix were to, let's say, raise their prices again, it could also lead to more people just, leaving Netflix, and then maybe, I don't know. I feel like I'd be more in the niche group, but I feel like there'd be a lot more people just pirating in general. Like, sure, there may be less people or less companies in the market doing streaming, so like it'll kind of go back to the olden days where Netflix was basically like the one and only streaming service, but like it was like the best one at the time because it didn't really exist yet because Blockbuster went out of business, and then, oh wow, I can watch every single movie in like the entire world on this like little streaming website. Awesome. But I'd say that piracy, legally obtained content would be the best move for the foreseeable future if Netflix were to potentially
but that's
increase their prices.
But the thing with that is, it's not practical for the majority of people. Like, it is easy enough to do, but at the same time, most countries have cracked down on piracy really hard. Like, we're lucky to live in America where piracy is a lot less regulated than the vast majority of the world. Like, it's regulated and sites are getting taken down actively, especially in the anime space, but like, other countries, it is a huge thing where like piracy is not readily available whatsoever, and they have pretty hefty punishments if you get caught for piracy, as opposed to America, where if you download something off of an illegal website, depending on what it is, you're never going to see any punishment for that, and it's really only the distribution of it that carries big fines, unless it's a Nintendo game, and then they're going to shoot you in the head in the back of the barn.
Well,
Look-
that's kind of true and kind of false at the same time because there are technically repercussions for downloading content. Exhibit, I had a friend that on his family's home network, he accidentally downloaded something without a VPN, and their home got hit with a DMCA notice to pay this fine, otherwise you're going to court. So they had to pay the fine, unfortunately. But also, I don't know if you keep up to date with a lot of American politics.
Oh, our favorite
I
topic
won't
on
go
the
super
Nerdy Nimrods
political.
podcast.
But there was recently a court case where I believe went to the Supreme Court. I could be wrong about that 100%. But they were trying to undo a previous law in which they would put the I think it was Sony Pictures was going to put the blame on piracy onto ISPs, so internet service providers. And if that were to be the case, then that would open a larger issue of kind of not piracy but privacy on the internet, just mainly because if ISPs were struck with the bill basically instead of the individual users using their networking service, that can lead to specific websites or even specific sections of the internet just being outright blocked from certain users for certain areas just because of that. And luckily that hasn't gone through where they undid it, but it was a close reality, or at least over here in the States, that we could have gotten even more stricter on piracy.
Well, and
Well,
look, at the end of the day, and this is this is what I'll say about all of this. Netflix bought Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers owned a lot of stuff. We all know that in 5 years, it's all going to be owned by Disney. So, good night, everybody. Thank you for
well,
coming to this TED Talk.
it is funny you say that because I did mention previously that Paramount is really upset about this right now. They're actually throwing claims around that there was a lot of misdeeds, like not necessarily illegal, I don't think, but they're upset and throwing around accusations about like insider trading essentially with this deal, with it not being properly advertised, with the board being biased, which again isn't legal but is sketchy in terms of the decision to sell. So Netflix, I don't know if this is going to go through depending on what a lot of that kind of boils down to, but it is kind of like an interesting tidbit because like the last big media merger outside of video games, which was Xbox buying Bethesda, which was a multi-billion dollar deal that also had many, many court cases and hoops that they had to jump through, was Disney buying Fox. And the reason why like I segue to that is because like you bring up like everything's going to be owned by Netflix or owned by Disney one day, that would violate the the law, but it would be like I don't know. I don't know what the future holds for that. But AJ did bring up something interesting. And this will be the last thing that I say on this. They're going to up prices. And that's the worst part about it is like Netflix has already found every excuse in the book to add ads into streaming, into like add even more pricing tiers and make it even more expensive. Password sharing isn't allowed, which was a really big thing. They're the only streaming service that doesn't allow password sharing. They crack down on it really hard. And things like that are, in my opinion, very, I mean, not even in my opinion, just objectively anti consumer. And unfortunately, that means that those same, I guess, practices are going to now apply to a whole new era of media under Warner Brothers and the media that they own. And then you also have like the Harry Potter TV show that's being made by HBO. That'll now probably be a Netflix show. Like, we don't know what that looks like, but I don't know. There's just a lot of it's such a shit show. It's such a mess. I'm personally very anti-corporate merger, at least large scale corporate mergers, because I'd rather everything be separate. But this was one that you could kind of see the writing on the wall that Warner Brothers wasn't doing too hot and something was going to happen. So if it's going to be Netflix, at least it's not Disney. But we do have something maybe more exciting, maybe not more exciting to talk about than a giant media merger, and that is a giant media release. Because what's up, Nimrods? It's your boys back with another episode of the Nerdy Nimrods podcast, the only podcast on the internet where your two favorite Nimrods talk all things nerdy. I'm your host for today's episode, Brandon, aka Parafish, here with my forever co-host,
Carson, aka Juggernaut.
and today is our first episode with a guest. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, but
Hey y'all, I'm AJ, aka at SteamPN on YouTube.
yes, he is actually our resident FNAF expert. Because if you did not listen to our last episode, yes, we will be talking about Five Nights at Freddy's 2. I
right.
know me and
All right,
Carson have
let's
our
just
thoughts, and it's gonna be a oh Jesus Christ, Carson.
let's just prepare for this.
Keep on chugging, keep on chugging.
All right, let's prepare for this review. All right, I'm ready. Let's go. I feel like it's appropriate.
Jeez Louise.
We got the biggest
But
lover versus the biggest hater. Let's go.
before we get into a argument that is probably going to be one for the ages for this podcast, about FNAF 2, I just have to ask, how are you guys doing? How's your week been? How's everything been hanging?
Oh God, it's been a long week. Didn't even know if this was going to happen today. There was a very strong chance that I was just not going to show up because of how much was happening. I watched this movie and I said, I got enough time. I came home and here I am. Enough said about that. Other than that, I'm tired. I have a pounding headache, and I would love to just talk about this movie right now more than anything else in the world.
I don't know if that's sarcasm or not, but AJ, are you ready to talk about it? How are you doing?
Oh, I'm absolutely ready. And Carson, I'm just saying, just a little bit more alcohol might help out a little bit with that headache.
Cheers.
I told Carson before we started recording, I was like, you better have some water nearby if you're good. Oh wow. Okay, this is gonna be I have my obligatory one-piece cup full of water. This is actual water. Um
I have water, but I also have
I saw you had
cola.
a cola there.
I have
Yeah.
mezcal, so just perfect for today.
I would like to verify Carson is over the age of 21. I can confirm this is not underage. I know we look like babies, but we are all adults here.
Well, and honestly, I'm honestly doing this for the bit because off camera, we even joked about this. We were like, if there was any like podcast to just like get drunk on, it would be the first one with the special guest and the one where we're talking about FNAF 2. Like of all the ones, this would be the time.
Carson, I think every time, whenever I start saying something cringe, you just take a shot at this point.
I think we'd kill Carson, actually. Like, Carson can handle his alcohol, but I think that would kill him.
It's been 5 minutes. How many shots have you taken? We're about 20 in. Let's see how this goes. Let's keep going.
I'm cracking the second bottle open now, and we're 30 seconds into the podcast.
I ran out of mezcal. I had to get wine out.
At this point, just start chugging Everclear. Oh,
Yeah,
God.
really.
Favorite college pastime for most. But before we get into
Obviously.
alcoholism and FNAF 2, I would like to give our obligatory spoiler warning. As always, everything we talk about from this point forward for FNAF 2 will contain spoilers. If you have not seen the movie and you want to see it without spoilers, I would recommend skipping honestly the entire rest of the episode. FNAF 2 is the only topic of conversation because we have a guest. We'll probably run a little longer than we typically do on one topic. So while there will be time stamps in the bottom of the description, as always, I would recommend from this point forward going and seeing FNAF. Or if you don't care about spoilers for FNAF, that's totally fine. Listen to the rest of the episode or skip to the next one. We'll tell you what that is at the end of the episode. But now that the obligatory spoiler warning has been going out of the way, since we have a guest today, I'm going to let him start with giving his thoughts, uninterrupted, Carson, on FNAF 2.
Wait, hang on.
I was gonna say, I'm just letting you know ahead of time. I'm gonna be to the audience. I'm gonna be keeping watch on Carson to see how many times he takes the shot.
No, I'm putting it away. I'm putting it away. Put it into a different cup.
Oh,
Wait, dude, where did you just dump that?
onto the floor.
Yeah.
Floor. No, into a separate cup I just had in my other hand.
Wait,
Put into his bigger cup full of alcohol.
There's another part to me. There's a whole lower half. What did you think was happening?
He has his margarita glass. He pulls it out into a big chug with even more alcohol in it.
I just got a keg of beer behind me. I put on one of those festive beer hats. I just start sucking from the straw.
God, this
is so cursed. What the hell are we doing here?
Honestly, this is exactly how I expect a FNAF 2 podcast to go. But now we're actually going to give AJ his 3 to 5 minutes of uninterrupted FNAF 2 thoughts before we get into our thoughts and then our back and forth.
Yeah, so pretty much as a FNAF fan, I've been in the series pretty much since its inception. I started out playing the games, and honestly, on my Android phone. It was like Samsung Galaxy S3. Definitely did not download random APKs on the internet in order to play the game. But as I got older, I got more into computer games, and then actually found out that, this was a computer game, not a mobile game. Got into that. I started doing YouTube in like probably 2015, 2016. Started out doing like Minecraft content because, Minecraft YouTuber, let's go. Then deleted that channel, got into Minecraft animations, merged that with a little bit of FNAF, and then did like live streams and whatnot. Got heavily more into it when I think it was like the 5th game came out, Sister Location. Loved that. Loved the 6th game, Pizzeria Simulator. because it has an absolute ending, which I'll get more into with my review of the movie. But basically, I say the movie, in my opinion, was a 8, maybe 8.5 out of 10. And I'd say it's doing pretty well because according to Variety, granted I don't know this website by heart, it's actually been doing pretty well for its first weekend compared to even Zootopia. It's gotten 63 million domestically, granted domestically, not globally, while Zootopia made 43 million in its second weekend. So I'd say it's doing pretty well, especially for a film that's made for the fans. Granted, I have some some people here that may not be the biggest fans. However, as a fan of the series, I think it did pretty well. And yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on my short thoughts on the matter.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Carson, I'll go ahead
Yeah.
and kick it over to you to let's be nice before we get into our back and forth. Just give
I
your
never said
thoughts.
I was gonna be mean. I never
Uh
said.
let's recall the phone call that we had before we led up into this episode, Carson.
Yeah, my phone call is completely honest. Look, here's what I'm gonna say about this film. And just history for me. I don't play the FNAF games. I've never wanted to play the FNAF games. I don't even really know the lore. I've never cared to know the lore. That being said, this is a film similar to, honestly, similar to Tron Ares in a sense, that's made for the fans. It gives people something back. If you're a fan of that franchise, you're going to love it. I remember walking out of the first FNAF movie going, I had a good time with it. It objectively, from a filmmaking perspective, is a hot garbage movie. From a fan perspective and somebody who genuinely just wants to go and enjoy themselves and have a fun time with the film, you can have a lot of fun with FNAF. FNAF 2, I'm going to say the same thing about it. You can have a fun time with it. I just don't think that there's objectively anything that's like really, for me at least, that didn't really hook me or grasp me. To be fair, and this is also history, I was like up for 24 hours. I fell asleep for like 5 minutes during this movie, not because I thought it was like the worst thing ever, because I was dead tired and I had a hard time watching it. So that's a little bit of something that we should note also whenever I give these thoughts. It has some great practical effects. Let me take that back. It has amazing practical effects. That's the biggest positive I'm going to give this movie over a lot of films that have come out this year. Almost every single bit of this film is practical, and it is incredible for that. The performances themselves are fine. I think Josh Hutcherson does a good job returning as the character he was in. McKenna Grace, I always like McKenna Grace and things. I think this movie falters a little bit in the writing, where sometimes it comes off as just a little cheesy or just a little dull, and you could have done more with it. But that being said, again, when you look at it from the perspective of somebody who's just a fan of the franchise, you don't really need top A, class A writing to make this work. You just need good animatronics, good scares, fun time had by all. So before I pass this to you, I'm going to review it like this. As a film, compared to something, like a Sinners, it's hot garbage. Like, I cannot recommend this if you are somebody who just wants to like watch a film and be in like a deep thought-provoking world, especially if you don't know the lore. As a fan, you're going to love this. And I think that that's honestly where like the Rotten Tomatoes score comes from, is the fact that like, hey, 13% is accurate as a film. I think it's like, hold on, 86. Let me look. I just had it pulled up. No, 86 is for the original one. 88. 88 for FNAF 2. That's about accurate for the fans because it's a film that they're going to enjoy. You're going to have a great time with it. But personally, it is not something that I'm ever going to really want to rewatch, nor can I really recommend this to somebody who wants something that's really deep and thought-provoking. But if you want something fun, you got a weekend, go watch Zootopia 2, but then you can watch FNAF if you haven't seen Zootopia 2 yet, or if you've already seen Zootopia 2. So that's where I'm at.
Fair enough. So My history with FNAF is similar to Carson's, but a little bit more in depth. I do know a little bit about the lore of FNAF because I love Matt Pat, and he is like the pioneer of theories for FNAF. So I'm familiar from the FNAF lore. Never played one of the games, but know the Matt Pat version of the lore, essentially, which I guess is just a theory, a game theory. But in terms of the first movie, I thought it was terrible. I thought from a movie perspective, it was a bad movie. There's no through line, there's no narrative. Things just kind of happen, and it's just a kind of there for the fans. But my problem with saying that a movie is there for the fans is if you're making a movie, you need to have more than that because Marvel could just be seen as for the comic book fans, but they actually turned it into a movie that mattered with emotions, with stories, with effects that converted people into Marvel fans. I feel like today, if you ask someone if they're a Marvel fan, they've probably never read a comic book before and aren't a comic book fan, but they still know Marvel and they love Marvel. If you're going to do something with FNAF, or you're going to take a beloved property, turn it into a film to hopefully convert more fans over, you need to make it still a good film. And I feel like the first movie absolutely failed at that. When it comes to the second movie, it's better, in my opinion. Now, granted, I watched this with friends. AJ was there, and I had a few other friends with me. And so maybe it was more fun because I could make fun of the movie with my friends and we could actually have a dialogue about it as opposed to me watching the first FNAF movie by myself in my living room. But this actually has a through line. It actually has a plot and a story that you can follow. It doesn't only rely on lore like I feel like the first one did. It actually explains some things to you in a way that makes sense if you don't know the FNAF lore. The performances, like Carson said, Josh Hutcherson does a good job. I would never say this is his best acting role. McKenna Grace, I this might just be on the marketing. They made her seem like she was going to be a main character in this movie. Like she was going to be the new lead alongside Josh Hutcherson. She's in maybe 5 minutes towards the beginning, disappears for most of the movie, and then comes back for like 3 other shots. And I don't know. That was a little disappointing to me. Maybe that's an expectation versus reality thing, but I do place the fault on the marketing for that. In terms of the rest of the cast, they're there. They perform things. I think that they're very clearly setting up for another FNAF movie, and maybe they can take the criticism and actually make it better, but I don't think they will, since obviously we see what happened with the first movie's score and they didn't learn. But that's just my general thoughts. I think if you're going to make something into a movie, you need to make it a good movie first and then care about the fans instead of going the opposite direction, because then you're not converting anyone. Like, I think again, we don't typically give like hard scores on the podcast, but like the 13% on Rotten Tomatoes is the most accurate score from a film perspective that you can give. And that's not going to convert the majority of people to be like, oh, I want to check out the video games. I want to watch the next movie. Because while it might be doing well this weekend, I don't see this movie doing all that well going forward. It's just going to be FNAF fans watching it over and over and over again, which might be enough. I know there's a lot of FNAF fans out there, but that's not what you typically look for when you're making a movie and putting all this effort into it. So that's just my thoughts. We can now get into the more formal back and forth. I don't know if there's anything that's top of mind for anyone that wants to like really dig into and start with. AJ, maybe you want to counteract some of our points, but
I mean, no, honestly, like both you and Carson have like made valid points. Like it truly is like a movie made for the fans, 100%. Like I agree that like it's definitely not the greatest way to go about watching a movie, especially since it's the second movie. And also, granted, I don't know, I'm not sure if you two keep up to date, like with Matthew Lillard, but basically when he first started doing the contract in the movie, he actually signed a 3 movie contract. So the movie series itself is definitely planned to be at least a trilogy. I don't know if he'll go ever past that, mainly because like lore wise, most of the story kind of ends after technically Origin's gonna be ending at the third game. But then reviews for the third game were like, hey, the jump scares were pretty much shit. And so Scott Coffin took that to heart and then made like the fourth game, which was amazing. But then people were like, hey, you didn't finish the story, went to the fifth and then the sixth one, which the sixth one, honestly, perfect chapter. If they didn't make any games after that, honestly, it would have been a perfect ending for the entire like game story wise, or the series story wise for the games. But also like I feel like yes, their second movie is not the greatest in storytelling, but also it's kind of like it's that midway point in that trilogy. So I'm not too familiar with like the concept of a movie, but just overall movie critiquing in general. But to my knowledge, there's like this thing called where it's the movie trilogy problem or something like that, where like you always have like your first movie to start out with like the main storylines. You have your mid, which ones tends to be like hit or miss depending on the series, and then your third one, which is like that grand finale, which like is like absolutely blows like the expectations away. And I feel like with my knowledge of the lore and like other people who are fans of the series that know the lore are going to be very excited for the third movie that will be coming up whenever it comes out. I feel like that they're going to be very excited for it. But again, I do agree that movie wise, like general critiquing wise, it's definitely not made for everyone, 100%.
Well,
However,
and
though, one performance I do love, one person that struck me as the best actor in that film was Freddie Carter. Bro's eyebrows look like the Rock meme. Bro was like,
I will
best
give
person
you
ever.
I will give you that. His performance in this movie was like it was leagues above the rest of the performances. Like he
Yeah.
had the biggest presence. It also like I will say this isn't like a knock against him or anything, but like the second his face showed up and you saw his facial expressions, you're like, he's the main villain. This is yep, we can clock exactly what's happening here. Which is it's funny, but it is, I don't know, like I guess it's good that he did a good job with the performance, but also like, man, you could have made it a little less obvious.
Well, and that's one of those things for me. I watched this movie, and when you like see the backstory and the dreams and this and that, I go, so like I predicted, I was like, so the brother's coming back. He's going to be the main villain some way, somehow. Like, and the predictability is not bad in a movie. You can still predict it and make it good. This was one of those moments where I went, okay, is this movie almost over yet? Can I go home? Is my homework assignment done yet? That's the biggest thing I feel like this film that to me as just like a something that's like not good is when I feel like I watch a movie and I feel like it's a homework assignment. I felt the same way with, and it is different because I do kind of like the movie more than this. I felt the same way with Gladiator 2 last year. Everybody was hyping it up. Everybody said it was really good. I'm not saying Gladiator 2 is bad. You can watch it and it's fine. But I felt a lot more like a homework assignment to me than it was just to go into the movies to enjoy a movie. There's things to like about it, but there wasn't necessarily anything that like really was like, oh yeah, that's totally a worthy follow-up sequel. Utmost faith that this is going to continue into another franchise. This film is kind of in the same boat. However, somehow I feel like this could easily go into a franchise versus the Gladiator movies, which I'm like, okay, we should have ended at one and just been done with it.
Well, so Carson,
Absolutely.
one thing that I'm interested about, because this is technically a horror movie. I mean, not technically, it is a horror movie, but
Yeah.
you being a lot more in tune with like horror, I know it is a very like, I guess, popular thing. I don't know if popular is the right word, but like slop horror movies. That's like a very common thing in horror
Yeah.
movies. Is that kind of like I don't know. Where does this rank in that? Like, is this like, do you feel like they were
Oh
going for
God.
a slop horror movie? Do you think they tried to like, what is like,
I
I
think
guess in
they
terms of the horror genre?
I think they try. So here's the thing with and this is a very unfair comparison. When I rank horror movies that are like this, and when I mean like this, I mean like PG-13 horror movies. It's so stupid. I compare them all to A Quiet Place. And I know that's not fair. I know A Quiet Place is its own original work John Krasinski created. But A Quiet Place also spawned 3 very successful sequels and one on the way, which is a third part that wraps up the entire thing. They have made 3 very successful movies. FNAF has 2 financially been very successful, not saying anything against that. But where this ranks is just like it's such a clear drop off to me. Because like at least with A Quiet Place, and I remember watching Quiet Place, I watched that with you. You jumped like a little girl. It was great. I at least had moments in both part 1, part 2, and honestly even day 1 to a certain extent where I did jump. Like I was like, that's terrifying. Like they had scares in there that I really found horrifying. I didn't find anything scary in this movie. I thought it was cool to look at, which sure is great. And look, that's one thing I will give over A Quiet Place. The effects in this movie are absolutely incredible because of how practical and real it is. But then again, I didn't find anything scary about this film. So the fact that it's a horror just it didn't add anything to me. Yeah,
I
it had your horror elements, but I don't know. But that's also me, and it's different from you because I know you're easier to get scared than I am.
Well, and I will admit, and AJ can confirm, I did jump out of my seat one time. It was once. No,
Twice.
it was
Twice.
once. When was the other?
For the trailer.
No, that was Riley. Riley jumped for the trailer.
Uh,
I did not jump during the trailer. I jumped during the movie. I'm trying to remember what scene it was. Do you remember off the top of your head what scene it was that this happened? It caught me off guard, and I think it was towards the very beginning of the movie. But I don't remember exactly.
It might have been when the marionette might have like come out of the box. I'm not too sure.
Ooh, that might have been it. But yeah, I will admit I jumped once. That was the only time I jumped. Now, I guess I'll throw this question to the both of you then, since we're talking about horror. Do you think this movie would have been better, worse, or at all different if they would have made this a rated R movie? If they would have gone full blown, no holds bar horror movie and actually like allowed themselves more freedom?
No, because I believe that it's a film that is made for the fans, and even still, the older we get, which FNAF was around when we were all really, really young. That being said, there's a cult following of just younger generation kids that are still around. This film would not do as well if it was just R and made for adults. You need the kids to come see this movie. Plus, this is like, to its credit, this is a film you can go and watch, and it's like that fun. It's not the summertime, but it's like that fun summer blockbuster popcorn movie you can go and watch with your friends and enjoy. You lose that whenever you get that R rating.
Yeah, honestly, I was really surprised that they released the movie in December of all times. I do agree with you. Like, it does give like that summertime vibes, especially with the whole in the movie. They have the plot point of Faz Fest, which is like a fall kind of themed festival that they had based off of, well, the horror aspect of the film, in which like kids died or a child died at the original location of or I guess Freddy Fazbear's. Um, and so I feel like I've as a fanatic FNAF fan, I've kept up to date with like the development of the movie. And they did had this conversation before in which they're thinking of, okay, should we make this rated R or should we be PG-13? And there's a ton of like back and forth even between fans, whether that be like on Reddit, Twitter, or like any other like forum post. Basically, people talk about, okay, like the film do amazing rated R or amazing PG-13, and some aspects of the film itself was really close to getting to rated R. Like for example, at the beginning of the movie, you have Charlie, the girl that that possesses the puppet. Like she has stab wounds on her back. Like there was a part in there was could have potentially been a part where like they show like the blood and gore coming out from her back with like William Afton, the main villain, aka Matthew Lillard, stabbing her in the back multiple times, like all the blood gushing and whatnot. Or even parts where like or the ghost hunting crew comes in and like one of the guys gets like torn into multiple pieces by Mangle from like getting hung up, and then each of his body parts going flying everywhere. That could have also been like shown in the movie if it were rated R. However, I do agree with Carson that like if it were to be rated R, it'd be a lot harder for people to get in, especially younger kids to get in and watch the movie. Granted, there are some parents out there that will allow their not so innocent child to watch films like that rated R. However, but like it does that type of aspect of having it be rated for an adult as a rated R adult-ish film would absolutely hinder it. Granted, most of the fans, like you mentioned, kind of came around that like time frame when the series first came about, like when it's all like point and click games, 100%. Like a lot of them are adults now and they can easily watch it. But for newer fans, it is definitely a lot harder to get into unless you are familiar with the games, in which I think Steelwool Studios, the current developer of the newer FNAF games are doing a decent job, especially working with PlayStation for making the games mainly PC and PlayStation exclusive and being showcased like heavily on like the state of play. I definitely agree that the film wise, like it's not gonna bring in a lot of new people. Definitely still fan favorite, but it's not gonna be great for newcomers.
Well, so you had mentioned that, like, so from a what are these games? Again, I know like very little about FNAF. What are the games themselves rated? Are they rated M? Are they rated what is it? I mean, they're definitely not E for everyone, but
E for everyone. Everybody gets to play this game.
everyone gets to shit their pants.
So with the first set of games from Steel Roll, FNAF Security Breach, that was a T for teen. And
Okay.
then with let me see, Secret of the Mimic, I think that was also T for teen, but I gotta double check that. But pretty much for the most part, the series has always been kind of like a tween teen. Yeah, same thing. The most recent release, Secret of the Mimic, is also T for teen. Granted, there are aspects of the games that could be potentially more teetering towards that. I forget the rating for M18. There we go. It
Yeah.
could get close to that, but there's not really a lot of content in there that would rate it to that aspect. Especially specifically since like there's not really blood in the game per se. So like that's like a big factor to my knowledge that like game raiders do. Like if there's like a lot of blood, gun violence, etc. Like the games don't have that. They do have that horror aspect, and they will like in a previous game in Sisto occasion they show dead bodies hanging from I don't know if I can say this word. From a rope hanging from the ceiling. Um,
Yeah.
so like they
Yep.
do show that, but the games are still rated at T for teen because like it's edgy to the point where like it's not like oh it's not gonna be like a G rated game or whatever. But it's just enough where it's not gonna be that mature. But also granted, all the FNAF games are in Steam, so like who really checks age ratings on a PC game?
Well, and that's also just a testament to like, what our society says, like, and dictates like what's allowed, what's not. I mean, look at the Magic Kingdom at Disney World and the Haunted Mansion ride. That whole pre-show starts off normal, the room stretches, it's scary, but it's fun enough for kids. And then it randomly cuts to a guy just like, without saying the word because demonetization is really bad, just dangling there by a rope, and the woman screams and whatnot. That, I mean, that's horrifying as a kid to see that. And Disney of all places allows that. So, it really just depends on what our society dictates as what's okay, what's not. But I think in the sense of this game, like I've never seen this game as a rated M 18 up game. I've always seen it as a teen game. Now, granted, I'm going to be completely honest. You said 18. I'm pretty sure it does 18 mean rated M? That
Yeah.
is officially
So
okay.
Like
M would be
17, 18 plus or something like that.
yeah, M in video games is 17 to 18.
Okay, that's what I figured. So it doesn't like I don't know. It kind of surprises me that it is. I don't know.
Well, I feel like that's the interesting thing about the difference between like a movie rating and a TV rating cuz like there's it's similar enough in general terms. So you'll have your TV 14 and then you'll have which would be equivalent to your PG 13, but technically a TV 14 show is typically way more has a lot more freedom than a PG 13 movie. And then you have your T for teen video games, which has its own like separate rule because they're all governed by different organizations and it's not just like one thing that dictates everything. So it is kind of like, I guess, interesting because technically a PG-13 movie probably still has a little less freedom in terms of what they can show on screen than what a T video game could.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of like my own speculations on that. But one thing that I am interested in. So obviously, we wouldn't ask you as a FNAF fanatic to come onto the podcast and not sit here and explain FNAF lore to us. I'm not gonna make you like Matt Pat 3 hour style video this, but I am like genuinely curious on I guess so I would assume these movies are following the lore and not really like trying to be a in-world thing, correct? Like this isn't like a they tie in the way of telling the story but not being like its own new thing, or is this like its own new thing? Because I know we've talked a lot about the video games, but I also do know, because you talked about them while we were seeing the movie, that there are also books for this, and I don't know how all of that lore kind of, I guess, works and ties together, because ultimately, until MatPat started posting videos about it, I viewed FNAF as just like one of those games that you turn on, you get jump scared by, you shit your pants a few times, and you move on with your life. Like that's in when MatPat started posting videos and like opening up about the lore, that's when I was like, okay, this is deep, but like what does that deepness look like, I guess?
Yeah, so pretty much lore-wise, the movies are pretty much following. It's more of a mix between the original trilogy books, so the Silver Eyes trilogy, as well as a mix of the games of the original games. So right now, the storyline wise is kind of mimicking the first three books, the first trilogy, and then FNAF 1, 2, 3, and then 5, which is Sister Location. Um, which that fifth one, Sister Location, didn't really get introduced until this movie came out, this FNAF Freddy's 2. Um, Pretty much, I foresee, or I guess a small recap for like the first movie lore wise. Um, you have Garrett, which is Mike Schmidt's brother, gets killed by William Afton like in the 80s, I believe ish, because he didn't watch his brother and he kidnapped him, killed him, whatnot.
So that
But
is in the video games.
that is not in the video games. So what is in the video
Oh.
games is you still have the original five children die, which to the community it's between like the DCI, which is like the Dead Children Incident, or the MCI, which is like the I think it's like main ch- main child incident, something like that. Don't kill
I
me.
read that as missing child
There we
incident.
go, missing child. There we go. My
Oh,
bad.
okay. Okay, I was right. Wow.
You might know
Nice.
more about me then.
I watched my MatPat videos
But
7 years
yeah,
ago when he
so
released them.
so pretty much, the lore of the original five children getting killed, getting stuff into suits. That's like following pretty well along with the first movie. Having Abby befriending them, that's not really in the storyline. Like you do have like the springlock suits, like in the first one, where you have like that little people are calling it the I think it's called the Abby doll or something like that. Where like in the first film, Abby gets almost shoved into the springlock suit by Chica and almost like crushes that, basically kind of like how Matthew Lillard as William Afton does at the end of the first film. Like stuff like that isn't necessarily inside the games. You do get reference of springlock suits in the third game as well as the fifth game, because the third game is where you actually get introduced to Springtrap, which is going to be the main villain for the third movie, obviously, since we got that end credit scene. Um, but for the most part, it's somewhat of a spin of it still follows the main lore wise of the games and the trilogy, but it's a little bit of there's a little bit of creative interpretation of it, mainly because again, you do have Scott Coffin working directly with the director. I forget her name, Emma Tammy. You do have Scott Coffin working directly with her, and you also have the support of all the main cast, including Josh Hutcherson, Papa Rubio, Elizabeth Lale, I believe is her last name. Like all of them, like are really invested in wanting to learn more about the series itself. Like, if you ever saw Matt Pat's video of him being behind the scenes of the first film, like where he got his cameo as Ness, which was a funny joke because Scott Cobb said, "Hey, that's pretty funny that you made a theory about Sans being Ness, so we're gonna name you Ness." Um, but everyone like went up to Matt Pat because they saw him as basically like the guru of all FNAF knowledge and all lore, and they were like, "Hey, what does my character do in like this scene? Like, how important are they to the storyline?" Unfortunately, like he said in his video, a lot of the people that he interacted with when he was on set didn't really have a major part in it. Like specifically, like the lawyer, the aunt, and like all the other characters like break into the pizzeria in the first movie. They didn't really have like they didn't exist basically in the game lore. But like Mike Schmidt, he exists. William Afton, he exists. Michael Afton, which we find in the second movie, he exists. Vanessa exists. Granted, Vanessa didn't really exist until Steel Wool came in and started doing the game. So since no, actually not even security breach, since the first FNAF VR game, so that would be Help Wanted, is when she gets introduced, but you actually see who she looks like in Security Breach. So she exists in the games. Henry Emily, which is he is played. What is he played by? I believe he is played by. I don't remember his name.
Henry Emily, you said. I also have.
Skeet Ulrich. That's who plays him. Henry is basically like a really heavy lore person, but he gets very few screen time, and a lot of people, aka FNAF, the YouTube channel, who also goes by the name of Andrew. He made a video, I think it was like a day or two ago, where he talks about how he believes that Skeet Ulrich had a small role in the second film because he's gonna be very heavily used in the third one, mainly because the lore was for Henry Emily, which is the father of Charlie Emily, which is the girl that dies in the second film, and possesses the marionette / puppet. He's basically like William's business partner since like the beginning of the lore wise. So since like Fredbear's Family Diner is what's predicted basically. And he's basically like this guy that's actually he either created or he like was just mainly the business side of things for the Fredbear / Fazbear Entertainment, but it does suck that he doesn't get a huge role. But also they had a lot of new characters in the film. But pretty much lore wise, relating to the film, the film is going. It's somewhat predictable based off lore wise, but also there are definitely a few different twists like even I wasn't expecting, like at the beginning and also at the end, in which Charlie as the puppet possesses
McKenna Grace's character.
yeah, McKenna Grace's character, or she possesses her. Like that's not a thing that's like pretty much existed lore in the
Like
game wise.
possession period, or just that
Possession
specific
of
possession?
people.
Interesting.
So like the only kind of instance that ever happened was in Sister Location, in which like if you beat like the hardest difficulty custom night, you do get a cutscene where Michael Afton, the guy who does the eyebrows, in the film, he does technically his body gets taken over by and it's like a amalgamation of multiple different animatronics in Sister Location, and he basically possesses his own body because like his guts are all gone, but then like the animatronics leave and he like repossesses his own body and is like able to walk around. So like it's kind of happened, but like it's never happened to where like a person dies, possesses an animatronic, and then that animatronic then possesses another person. Like that has not really been done before in the lore. And the
Is that
ending where Vanessa gets possessed by the puppet was definitely like completely flabbergasted me when I saw that at the movie.
So is that something that, like, I don't know, like you specifically as a fan, but I guess you're probably a little bit more in tune to the like general fandom reaction to the movie than we are, obviously. Is that something like the new introductions with the possession and the new characters and things like that? Have people been generally like pretty well receiving to that from the fandom side? Has there been anything that the fandom's been like, why did you introduce this? Like, this is breaking canon? Because like I guess that's the thing. Like, technically, they can't break canon because if the movies are their own canon, but there's also going to be those fans that are like, oh, well, this never happened in FNAF and we didn't know this was possible and whatever have you.
So like for the FNAF community, I've been more recently keeping up to date like on like r/FNAF on Reddit. It's more like half of the people are like, oh, the movie is like not good and oh well, or like it's a shit movie. And then there's the other half in which
I didn't
like,
know
oh,
Carson was in the FNAF subreddits.
he's actually the one who's like spamming all the messages in the subreddit.
I'm actively doing that right now as we speak.
Yeah, that's anytime he leans down and looks on his phone, he's just transcribing his thoughts into the FNAF subreddit actively.
Oh my goodness. I can't wait to see how many comments he's made at the end of this, how much karma he's going to earn. Um,
Can't receive any more than I did for my Trinaries reboot, brother. Just keep going. It's fine.
But pretty much the community, like the side of the community in which they love the movie, honestly has had a pretty positive take on the films. As when the Silver trilogy came out, everyone was like, okay, so like not all the lore is like basically from the games is inside the books. Granted, the games were a lot more sparse in the lore itself because like it's more up to kind of interpretation, but also because like Scott like really wanted people to put pieces together, like little bitty pieces from each little game and just combining them together. And like the books gave like a lot of extra detail, and even though the books were different for some parts of the lore, like the major story of it for the books is basically you have, I think her name is also Charlie, actually, funny enough. Um, you have Charlie who basically goes throughout life, and finds out like later down in the books that like she's basically like a robot in the final book called the Fourth Closet, and that like there's a version of her from like young age, like elementary, middle school, high school, college, adult, whatever, and like her father basically like, created her. But you like that doesn't really exist in the game wise.
Okay.
So like there are definitely aspects, or even like with the new books, such as I forget what the new books here. So there's two new ones. There's basically ones like that happened before Security Breach, and there's ones that happen after Security Breach, like not lore wise or story wise, but more like when they were created, the books themselves. And like they all those books have like 80 little bitty pieces of like lore, but majority of the stories don't actually relate entirely with the games or like the overall lore storyline as a whole. Especially like with what was it? The recent 2D FNAF game. I'm blanking on the name. I loved it. I loved it to death. Into the Pit. There we go. It was that one was based off of one of the books, one of the newer books, not after the trilogy. And lore wise, it told some of the lore for like the original few games as well as the Silver trilogy, as well as a couple other Fazbear Frights books. But it didn't really. It's also kind of its own story in a way. So Scott has this kind of thing where like any new form of media, whether that be books, movies, or games, you still have the overarching storyline, but you also have little bits and pieces that were like made as like, I like to think of them like as red herrings to kind of like throw you off a little bit, but also like it's a different interpretation of like, okay, this could be like a different universe in which XYZ exists for some reason. Um and so like lore, more lore.
Just
It
more lore.
just more lore.
Everyone loves lore. It does kind of surprise me how deep the lore is for what could easily just be a simplistic jump scare horror game. But we've let we've let AJ ramble on about FNAF lore a little too long. We haven't really torn into the movie enough. We haven't ripped this movie to shreds, I feel like, as much as it deserves. So I'm gonna ask you a question. Maybe you'll have an
Yeah.
answer, and I hope you do. What is the dumbest moment in this movie for you? Because I sure as hell have an answer, and AJ knows my answer to this question because I ripped into this moment after the movie. But there's plenty to talk about. There are a lot of stupid ass characters in this movie that just don't react like normal people should.
We have Stern talking.
The dumbest moment, probably when the creative head sat down and said, "Let's make a FNAF sequel." I think that was probably the dumbest moment. No, I don't know. There was a lot of real. What moment are you referring to? Because there's a lot of dumb moments.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and start off. The dumbest moment in FNAF 2 for me is easily when Toy Bonnie decides that she wants to go and break into someone's house, but instead of using her hulking strength that has been pre-established for the animatronics, no, she goes and knocks on a little girl's window with her dainty hands, not Thunder Thighs Chica over here who destroys everything apparently. She goes and daintily knocks on the window, and then this I get that she's a child, but she's the dumbest child I've ever seen in my life. Lets this giant ass animatronic somehow fits her through her window, mind you. Like, that's a fat ass window for Thunder Thighs McGee over here to fit through. And then just sits and have a tea party with her. And the next thing you know, Chica's trying to kill her mom. That was the
Yeah.
most ridiculous stretch of events. I have another answer to this, but did that spark anything for you?
Mr. Berg was a really dumb part of the entire film, and I love Wayne Knight. Wayne Knight is genuinely one of the funniest actors from the 90s and just like bit characters like Jurassic Park, Seinfeld, Space Jam. We're talking about the person who does bit roles, and it's just great. And here he does a bit role, and the whole character is just incredibly stupid. I hated it, even
I
to
loved
the
him.
end.
I loved
He
him.
just reminded me of my college professor. He was just an asshole. That's all.
That was dumb. I don't know. Like the whole thing, man. The whole
Well,
thing
see,
to a certain extent was really dumb.
I loved
But
Mr.
I
Berg because he was, in my eyes, he was just the comically evil teacher that just hates all kids. And me and my friend, who I was sitting next to in the theater, it wasn't AJ, it was another friend that I was sitting next to. We kept turning to each other, and he's like, he's just based. Like, rip into these kids, tell them they're stupid. Because
yeah, I mean, look, your question's hard for me to answer because I think in all actuality, the whole thing to me is dumb. But I think there's a lot of moments like the moment you just mentioned that is just not very logical. Like I know that's another way of saying dumb, but there is a difference between you being dumb and legit just not being like logical at all. Like, I'm sorry. I like the term Thunder Thighs McGee. That's a great term. Ain't no
Thunder
way she
Thighs
getting her ass through the window and then having a tea party while the person actively tries to kill. Like, it's so dumb. Even in the first movie, they had moments like that too. I was like, that's really stupid. Why are we doing this? Why is this happening? And I mean, I think the biggest thing, if we're sticking with dumb, it's the fact that I didn't buy a single, and they were even in the last movie together, and they had a more believable relationship. I didn't believe Vanessa or Mike's relationship in this movie. I didn't believe it at all. I didn't think I was given a reason to care about the relationship. I didn't care about either of them at all. I was waiting for one of them to actually just die so that something would happen. And it goes back to Abby here. What a horribly written character. What a horribly handled character. You have a really cool concept. And honestly, I think the first movie actually handled it kind of well. The second movie, I don't think handled it well at all because they didn't do anything new. They just retreaded old plot points, which I guess is fine in like a certain standpoint, but here it doesn't make any sense, especially after everything they've all been through. I will say something I did like, and this is just a horror fan thing. It is really nice to see Matthew Lillard and Skeet Ulrich on screen again. Like as a fan of Scream, I love seeing them on screen together. But there were numerous points in the movie I go, oh yeah, they're both from Scream movie. I want to think about how that's a better movie than FNAF 2 is.
Well,
no, I mean, look, the whole thing to me is just dumb. So I think
My-
to answer your question is that, but there's a lot of things that just aren't logical in this movie also too.
my other favorite one, and it happened twice, but it's weird that it happened twice, is people's inability to get out of water. So in the beginning, when McKenna Grace's
Oh my
crew
god.
goes in and is trying to do their whole investigative journalism, which also another illogical thing where they're like, this is gonna be the best episode. You split up. Your audio person's over here, your film person's over here, and the I don't know, third wheel is over there in the corner. Like, what episode are you making? Everyone's split up, but one of them falls into the water and then just stays there. He does nothing. He has no sense of urgency at all. He just stands in the water having a little splishy splashy. And I'm like, brother, you deserve to die here. Like, I'm sorry. he got eaten by like piranha fish, like not piranha fish, but like piranha
Piranha puppets, yeah.
yeah, piranha puppets. And I'm just sitting there like, you deserved that because you fell into the water and then just stood there. Like nothing was like, I get it. At this point, they technically don't know that the animatronics are happening. But if I were to fall into freaky ass water in a haunted place, the first thing I'm doing is teleporting out of that water. And then it happens again when freaking Mike falls in the water and he has a little bit more of a sense of urgency, but he actively knows that there are scary animatronics coming for him. And yet he still stands there in the water for way too long, looking around, waiting to die.
Yeah, I like to think that the first guy, like, there's just some, and this is all in my head, but the way that moment makes sense is that guy was actively choosing death. Like he wanted to die. Like this was his way of leaving this world, and he was just like, it's like when you joke with your friends, like if there's a car coming, and it's like maybe a mile out, but you see the headlights, and they're, dude, you can't stop. You're gonna get hit by the car. Nah, it's too late for me. Just keep going. No, but seriously, there's more than enough time. Just take 2 steps to the left. You could actually walk pretty. That snail made it quicker than you did across the street. Just take 2 steps to your left. No, it's really, I can't make it. It's like one of those moments where you're just like, you totally could have just like gotten out of the water and been perfectly fine. So in my mind,
I gotta counter argue it.
okay, go
Okay.
My
ahead,
counter argument is think of the most average person that you know.
Brandon.
Divide their intelligence by half. That's the most average person
Brandon.
you'll see in the world, I'd say. And also,
Well,
you're forgetting one thing. There's a thing called fight or flight. Everyone in this film had the opinion to just fight, I guess, because they did not want to fly away. So if
Yeah.
it wasn't fight, it was just freeze. So therefore, flight, fire, or freeze, all of them did freeze.
Well, I
Well,
guess
yeah.
that is a good question because, like, I joke about like the water and stuff, but like in general, the characters in this movie have zero fight or flight. Like they have like another one of my favorite examples of dumbest moments is when Vanessa is in the car and she actively has animatronics on top of her car that have been attacking her. She then veers off the road, gets out of her car, gets flung out of her car, I can't remember, and starts getting attacked. Then she gets back into her car. The animatronics jump back on top of her car, but then don't bother her for the next 5 miles when she drives to the neighbor's house. And she just decides that you know what? I'm just going to live with it. Like, huh? That made no sense.
So
But I guess
there's a reasoning for that because
Okay.
technically, the animatronic on top Mangle, what all the animatronics were technically controlled by Charlie, which is the puppet. And because of that, Charlie had a long-standing relationship before she died with Vanessa. And so therefore she didn't actually want to kill her. She just wanted to subdue her, which is why earlier in the movie, like Vanessa gets captured and whatnot, gets like shoved into a locker. So like she's not out to kill her, she's just out to stall her, and therefore, even if Vanessa just hop out of the car, goes back in the car, like, okay, seems safe, Aaron Cross not here, okay, time to go. Drives off. Makes perfect sense because, like, Mangle can't be seen. Granted, she didn't look above the car, but to be fair, who looks above the car anyways? Like, who looks on top of a giant van?
I look above my car when there's deadly animatronics on top of my car. I don't know
have you ever dealt
personally.
with deadly animatronics before?
I hope to
Nope.
never. If
Nope.
Chuck,
Point proven.
So-
Point proven.
So I can also sum this up in 2 simple words, and these are 2 words that a lot of filmmakers like to use today but never mention, and it's called plot convenience. Things just happen because plot convenience. Most of the deaths in this movie, plot convenience. Why did everybody split up? Plot convenience, just so we can have our epic fight scene of everybody dying and this and that and whatever.
well, I guess
mean,
that's AJ. You brought up a thing, and I was gonna ask you about this because you kind of alluded to it. Every character in this movie is the dumbest human being in the world. They have an IQ of grape. They have the fight or flight of a fart. They have no survival instincts whatsoever.
Except
Is
Freddy
that
Carter.
all?
Except Freddy Carter. He as soon as he got knocked out by Jeremiah at the end, after you go from inside the house back to outside, he's gone. He has the best fight or flight response.
Well, sure, but my question is, I guess, is that also the case in the game? Like, are the characters, the other like human beings in the game, are they also just idiots, or is that like something exclusive to the movie.
Well, so technically, game-wise, you do, for the most part, go back for 5, maybe 6 or 7 nights in the game. So technically, you don't really have fight or flight in the game. But also, the whole premise of like at least the first game was the reason why you're like locked in place is to limit your surroundings, limit the amount of information you're able to see, which adds that horror aspect of it. But technically, yes, based off of the fight or flight response from the movies, you technically have the same kind of fight or flight response in the games because like when you get jump scared, you're kind of gonzo. And then like if you survive the night, you come back for the next night, which granted, lore wise, there's not really a whole lot of explanations for that of why like the player tends to like go back night after night. But like my the canon in my mind, going based off of the first movie, is that like, oh, the player wants to find out more about like the lore of the establishment, or in Josh Hutcherson case, playing as Mike Schmidt in the first movie, he wants to learn more about why did his brother get killed, what happened to him, why are these kids haunting these suits, how did these kids die, why do I have to guard this silly place? But also like also plot point in the first movie is that Mike Schmidt, aka Josh Hutcherson, didn't really have a choice in like getting this job. He had to come back for every single night because he couldn't keep a job well. Like he worked with Jeremiah in the first movie as security guard, but then with PTSD flashbacks of him failing his brother and getting his brother killed by Matthew Lillard as William Afton, like he can't keep a stable job. So some people in desperation do tend to go back to jobs that will just kill them over time. Like there's plenty of examples of that in like real life where people can't do specific jobs due to one reason or another, just keep going back because they either need to or they just are forced to at that point.
See, I do agree. Like, that is a very fair argument for the first movie. I think that that is like, I can logic that for the first movie. The second movie, though, he's not even working there anymore. Like, he
Correct.
goes back there because Abby goes back there because she's an idiot and has the look. I get that she's a child, but like, come on, man. This movie, man. I literally said this verbatim after we got out of this movie. Is this entire second movie could have been prevented with a lighter and a can of gasoline if you just would have walked in and burned the place down.
Well, that's gonna be the major plot point for FNAF 3. I'm calling you right now because on the third game, Final Night, the entire place burns down. That's gonna be the plot point. So your wish has been granted.
I'm about to say
That's
you also
actually huge.
you forget the biggest thing here, and that's that money needs to be made. And so I don't care if it's logical. I want that money. I'm gonna make it happen. So thank you for making this movie. Thank you for me. Oh God, I could have gone to bed and I went and saw the FNAF movie too. I could have done so many things with my night. I saw
But you
FNAF
watched
movie
FNAF movie
too.
too. Yeah. Yeah. Another dumb moment just to throw it out there to remind Carson about how hilarious this movie is was when Michael, not Mike, when Michael is running out of the house at the end of the movie and gets absolutely clotheslined by a random stranger who has no involvement with the situation whatsoever.
Well,
It was
he's
just
Mike's friend. To be fair,
well
that's
no no no.
Jeremiah. That's Mike.
He was
That's Mike Schmidt's
It
friend.
made me so happy to see him get absolutely body slammed by somebody. I was like, God, dude.
But it's funny because Jeremiah had no knowledge whatsoever about anything other than what Vanessa gave him about like she was rushing off and something was happening. But some random dude runs out of his house and he just is like, "You know what? Bad dude." Bah! Which was just it was just hilarious. It killed my friend who was sitting next to me. He like died because he was like, what if that was just like a dude who was also scared and a good guy and the actual threat was inside the house? Which, to be fair, the actual threat was still inside the house, but the animatronics were disabled. Um, which is funny. Do the animatronics ever fight in like because that was a big plot point in the way that they defeated the animatronics in this is you bring the like I guess old animatronics in to fight the new generation of animatronics, which also, mind you, feels very much like a third movie type of act, not like a you wait to do that. You wait to bring that back.
Yeah.
Is that something that like happens in the games at all where the like I know there's no like FNAF fighting game or anything. However, hey, You want to take my ideas and make more money? It's probably gonna be better than the movie. Make a FNAF fighting game. I want to fight as Thunder Thighs Chica against Matt Pat's Toy Bonnie.
So there is no technically there is no animatronics fighting each other, which honestly, out of the movie, as one of the biggest FNAF fans on this episode, I will say I did find it a little silly that the original animatronics did come in to fight the toy animatronics. I was like, huh, this gives me the Power of Friendship vibes, and this is very cringe. I enjoyed it. It was funny, but also I was like, huh, this is a little silly. Which plot relevance, yes, that is true. So that was the one caveat I will say. Um, However, I it does remind me of this one meme that's been around for a while, in the FNAF community, in which it's in the FNAF 2 game, like in one of the cameras, we see like the cameras of like Toy Freddy, Toy Bonnie, and Toy Chica. It reminds me of like when Withered Bonnie comes in to grab Toy Bonnie's mask, just like, try and shove, not shove, pull his face off, basically, just get his face back. That's what that whole scene reminded me of, and I thought it was so fucking funny. Um,
Well, it's
but
also the
yeah,
fact that like the old, broken down, barely put together, one's missing his face animatronics beat the new, shiny, fully put together like toy animatronics. Like that was
so
a stretch.
So the broken down ones, the ones you're talking about, the ones like missing the like Bonnie missing his face, those aren't the ones that are fighting. You're thinking of the ones that Mike Schmidt, Josh Hutcherson was going against inside of the FNAF 2 location, which honestly, greatest adaptation of the actual gameplay itself, wearing the Freddy mask and like defending yourself against the animatronics, excellent, as well as the reference to I think it was like a Pymations animation from years ago in which like um Foxy like jumps out at the night guard and like as soon as like everything like turns to 6 a.m. he just freezes and drops. Amazing reference. Um but I would say that like that scene with the toy animatronics, it kind of makes sense because the toy animatronics were made especially after finding out that Toy Chica has like a spring lock suit, which is basically like it's an interior in which a person can actually step inside of those animatronics and wear as a suit. But if they breathe on it wrong, like canonically, they will like get crushed to death, like Matthew Lillard did in the first movie. It's like it kind of makes sense in a way for the toy animatronics to be more stiff and as well as not be able to defend themselves pretty well against the OG animatronics from the first one because the first one those animatronics are just fully like animatronics. There's no like someone could step in and become a suit like that. Like that, it kind of makes sense for that to logically happen. But again, I think it was just a little silly because it just gave me Power of Friendship vibes. That's it.
I mean, that's the way you need to end any good movie, especially a horror movie, right, Carson? That's the greatest power of friendship. My Little Pony.
Fuck FNAF 2.
Hey, I'm just saying the FNAF series is the greatest Scream trilogy ever.
I think you just broke Carson.
No,
No, not the alcohol.
I'm just saying, I didn't say that. That was what people online on Reddit said. They said, "Wow, the FNAF trilogy is the greatest Scream trilogy ever because it has both returning characters from the original Scream movies." So,
Yeah, no, I'll give it to you because technically both have not returned yet together, so I'll give that to you. That's valid.
See, your first mistake though was listening to people on Reddit.
No. Your first mistake was buying a ticket to see FNAF 2. No. Look, I'm reaching a limit. You guys can continue talking if you want. I've reached a limit where I've said a lot of what I can.
Well,
say
I
about
was
this
gonna go
film.
ahead and wrap this up here as well. So if you want to go ahead and give your final thoughts.
Yeah, I'll go and go first. Look, like I already said, this is a film that if you're a fan, you are truly going to enjoy this. Without a zero doubt in my mind, you will love this film. If you are somebody who is a horror fan, or if you're somebody who's just a fan of a film that like you really want to like deeply think about like some deep rooted themes,
it's not the film for you. This is a film that's purely there to entertain, and I think to a certain extent it can do that, just not for me. You know, again, I would rather sit down and watch A Quiet Place than I would this movie, or I would on you know what, screw it. I would rather watch Tron Ares than this movie again. I'm fully admitting that. I would rather watch Tron Ares. You hit it.
Carson loves Tron Ares. It's his favorite movie of the year. Confirmed. Let's go.
Yeah, new number one. Get out of the way, sinners. Again, there's a lot to like about it. The practicality of all the sets and the costumes. If this film doesn't at least get nominated for the Oscar of hair and makeup and costumes and effects and designs, I would be very shocked. This film fully should be at least nominated because of that. That being said, it's not the greatest thing I've ever seen. Personally, I won't watch it again, but I don't doubt that there are going to be people out there who will enjoy this film.
Fair enough. AJ, you have anything you want to say specifically to close up your thoughts on FNAF?
Sorry, I thought I had a burp. My final thoughts, I would say, pretty much, as a FNAF fan, you will absolutely love it. There's so many references to the lore. There's so many memes, especially when I think it was Dr. just said like he squeezed the toy Freddy plushie doing the
Oh my.
that was absolutely hysterical. So just all the meme references, all of the lore references, absolutely FNAF fan will absolutely love it. But again, if you're not familiar with the series, you're not familiar with the lore, you're absolutely not gonna like it. If you're gonna introduce this to people that have no idea what the hell FNAF is, it's also not gonna be great. But at the core of the movie, as the director said many times in multiple interviews, it's definitely a film made for their fans. And if you're a fan of the series, absolutely go watch it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I'm not going to give too much of my own closing thoughts on FNAF because I feel like I'm just going to echo kind of what both people have already said. Because, like, look, if you're a horror fan, don't watch this movie. If you're a movie fan, don't watch this movie. If you're a FNAF fan, sure, you're probably going to enjoy the movie. If you're, like, look, I do think, though, if you're not a FNAF fan and you want to watch this movie, don't go alone. Go with friends. Like, have fun with it. Because, like, I genuinely, like, I can poke fun at the movie all I want. I had a good and fun theater experience only because, like, I went with friends. I was able to joke around about it. And it's just, like, kind of let loose, enjoy the movie, eat some very overpriced Five Guys fries that we had snuck under my friend's hoodie. And yeah, overall, like, if you're gonna see this movie and you're not a FNAF fan, that's the way I recommend doing it. Because, like, if you're going into this to be critical or to, like, overanalyze the movie, which is what we typically do on the podcast, like, it's just not that type of movie. It's not gonna offer you really anything, to be honest with you. But yeah, that's our thoughts on FNAF. Next week, I'm like extraordinarily excited for next week. I am very, very excited. I know Carson is as well.
Goated.
Because we have
Goated.
Wake Up Dead Man. I think that's the only thing we might there's a few things that are rolling around in my brain, Carson, that we might add on top of it. Because there was another Netflix movie that just recently came out that's getting I think it's called Train to Dreams or something like that came out on Netflix. That's like most people's like favorite Netflix movie of the year or something. So we might watch that. I don't know, but at the very least, Wake Up Dead Man. I am like the biggest Knives Out fan in the world. Like when we did our top 5 movies to get to know us, when we did our first, what was it, like second episode of the podcast, Knives Out was like my number 2 or number 3 movie. Or I think it was my number 3 because it was Endgame and Everything Everywhere All at Once were my top 2. But I think Knives Out was like my number 3. Like I love Knives Out, and to a lesser extent, like Glass Onion was really good. So the fact that we have a third movie and probably hopefully going to get these movies for basically the rest of time until Ryan Johnson is going to stop writing them, I'm very excited to talk about the next one. But yeah, that is our next week in movies. Yes, Carson?
Can I point out the obvious? Because this also has not been said yet, and I could be wrong. This is our 40th episode, isn't it?
It is. It is indeed our 40th episode.
Woo!
That means we've been doing this consistently for 40 weeks, which is crazy to think about. we're only 10 weeks away, Carson, from 50 episodes, which
Yeah.
is we'll have to do something. I need to look at the calendar and see what's going to be episode 50 because I haven't done that yet. But that is it's a big milestone. I'm pulling up
Do
the
a live
calendar now actually to
stream.
see.
Do a live stream for your 50th.
Live
would
stream.
be
We're watching Tron
immense.
Ares.
I mean, I don't know if you should you should live stream a movie, but
You know what's really funny? So I just looked at what episode 50 is supposed to be. Um it's it's an episode. There are things to talk about. The You're going to love this, Carson. The two things I currently have this on the schedule for episode 50 is Wuthering Heights and Goat, the basketball movie with a goat in it.
Oh my god, we got to find other movies. We got to find some. I'll do a rewatch. I will rewatch something. I don't care.
You're not excited to talk about Goat, the movie that my friend who I saw this movie with makes fun of every single time he sees a movie poster for it because it looks so like it's if this is I look, I'm so ready to walk into that movie and have my mind absolutely like blown, but like there's no way. There's no way it's gonna be good. Like, maybe it'll be half decent. It'll be better than Toy Story 5, probably, but still.
Actually, that's going to be an argument. Would it be genuinely be better than Toy Story 5? Toy Story 5, I don't know. Because Toy Story 4 actually was objectively good. Just people hated it because it, should have ended with a third one. So we'll see. You never actually know.
Yeah, that's the general problem with like the Toy Story movies is it should have ended with 3. They've never made a bad movie. They haven't. It is true. However, that doesn't mean that we need more of them, especially when your trailer for Toy Story 5 already breaks canon for the ending of Toy Story 4 because Woody is just there, He's just chilling. You know what happened at the end of Toy Story 4? Because I do. Woody left. So, how are you going to explain that? Why was he in the trailer? I don't know. Does Pixar know? Probably not.
I know this one, and I already answered this. Plot convenience.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
I thought you were going to say money because that's the objectively correct
No,
answer.
that's the answer in one word is money. The answer in 2 words is plot convenience.
I have
Yeah.
a theory. My theory, because if I recall correctly, the whole plot point is like there's like a Leapster like iPad basically that gets introduced or something like that. So my theory is that the child accidentally orders a clone of Woody off of Amazon. Because technically, I think it was like in the first movie, like Buzz, he's like there's like hundreds of clones of him basically in the toy store. Or it's like in the first or the second one. It's been a hot minute since I see Toy
Second one.
Story. There's a second one.
Yeah.
So I feel like maybe something like that, like whoever the child is that owns like the Leapster iPad or whatever, like buys a clone of Woody by accident and just like, hello, Woody's here now, ta-da!
See, the only problem with that is it was a very big plot point. That was actually the entire point of the second movie was that Woody is a very, very rare and special collector's item. And so I'll give you this. If this was a Temu knockoff Woody, that would be hilarious. It would be terrible. Like objectively, it'd be a terrible plot point. But if they were like, "Hey, we ordered you a replacement Woody because you lost yours, but it's from Temu and it's a Chinese knockoff," that'd get a chuckle out of me. Then I'd be upset about it, but it would get a chuckle out of me.
I mean, it could also be like Hasbro does with like the Transformers series, where they bring back older like toys from like the 90s, 80s, like make them like basically brand new, like the new manufacturing process. So it could be something like that maybe too. But again,
or it
or it could be plot convenience. Yeah,
it could be the obvious, which is money and plot convenience.
Yeah, I wouldn't be
Tom Hanks is
surprised.
here now, but yeah,
Fair
I don't know.
enough.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Anything anyone else wants to say before we close this episode out? Hearing none, barring any. Fair enough.
That sounds about right.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, that is a conclusion to our episode 40 of the Nerdy Nimrods podcast. The only podcast on the internet where your 2 favorite Nimrods can talk all things nerdy. This time, 3 Nimrods talking all things nerdy. We are on all podcast hosting platforms at Nerdy Nimrod, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, literally any we're on freaking Pandora. Like I put us on every single podcast hosting platform that you've heard of and not heard of, so you can find us there. We're also on all social media platforms at Nerdy Nimrods, where I post about anime most of the time. Carson will talk about wrestling or whatever TV show he's watching. You can also watch clips whenever I have the time, which is rarely, to post clips of the podcast at Nerdy Nimrods Clips on specifically YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. But with all that being said, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And as always, stay nerdy.